Hi, I'm Lorena and I wanted to do a tutorial on infamous binding, and this is my binding strip. This is not my favorite part of doing the quilt. It really isn't. But I have some tricks on how to bring your ends together because you need a lot of strips of fabric to make a big giant roll like this. And so I use Elmer's glue. That's what you're going to use. Yes, the infamous Elmer's glue. And we're going to go ahead and make this huge binding strip. So here I have my beautiful purple fabric, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I'm going to cut it 2.5 inch strips. So I'm going to roll it over. So I'm going to cut off the end, and I'm going to do, you can do 2 1/4, 2.5. Some people do 2 inch. I like 2.5. And so here's my pieces, and then I'm going to connect them. So I'm going to show you how to connect them. Triangle on this end, and I'm going to iron it. What we're going to do is we're going to connect the sashing pieces together. And this is how you would also do sashing. Now, I'm turning them the same way, each one, so there's a consistency on my sashing. Now it doesn't matter. People are going to nitpick about how you connected your sashings. But our hope is that one day we're going to do, my hope is that one day I am to end up doing a quilt for competition. And I want to make sure that I already thought of the bells and whistles. And I'm only doing one end, and then I'm piling it up. I'm going to put glue on this end. Yes, the wonderful Elmer's glue. And I'm going to get the end of another totally, completely different piece. And I'm going to lay it down. And then I'm going to lay this down to where it's perfectly even here and even here. And then I'm going to iron it. Now, it's tacked down now, so I could go and just sew it. And here's my seam line. But I'm going to do that through all these strips. So here's this strip. Get my Elmer's glue. And you don't need a lot of it. I'm going to lay this piece downward. It was like this. I'm laying it downward. And the reason is that I'm doing this is because I want to go ahead and connect all these strips that I made together. So I'm laying this way. Now I can open this. Here's my Elmer's glue. Here's the end that I had, facing it down. And then I'm going to flip it. And you can get right to the edge of your corner fabric here. And tack it. And so I'm going to go through my strip and make sure that I tacked everything right. And when you're doing, I think I'm going to do the binding on a quilt, like a queen size quilt. This can mess up because you can tack this down wrong, and then you sew it wrong, and then you have to unstitch, and I hate unstitching. It sucks. And so here it is, and now we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew all these strips that I'm showing you that I tacked down. Here's it closed I'm going to open it. Here's my seam line again. Here's the sashing again. I think you can see it. I'm going to open it. Here's the other piece. Open it. And just keep going until you're done with all that sashing that you're connecting. Done sewing all my pieces and it looks like a crazy mess. I'm going to cut my thread. And so now I have it all chained together. Now I'm going to open this. I hope you can see it. I'm going to cut and make sure I have a fourth. Because I already checked to see, I'm going to cut that chain off. Because I already checked to see that they were all upright. So here I am, I have my piece, and now I'm going to iron that seam. And I'm going to do that with every seam that I sew together. I do not open my seams. I've noticed that the quilters or piecers that open their seam, the seam seems to open sometimes, especially when it's in the process of being long arm quilted. And since I do long arm quilting, I've noticed that when the seam is open, when the needle can get caught in between and open that seam when it's being quilted on the machine. Okay, so here I'm at the end of ironing all my pieces. Now, you can use this for your sashing, especially like on the outsides of your quilt top, and to add different dimensions, almost like a frame around your quilt. But I'm going to use this sashing into, and I'm going to make it into binding so that I could bind my quilt. So here I'm at the end of my tail of the binding. And the way you make binding is that you go ahead and you fold this in half. You want to make sure that it's folded as perfectly as you can fold it. And I moved all the pile of fabric to one end. Now I'm on my end and I'm going to start rolling it. And the reason you make yourself a little roll like this is because you're going to have a lot of fabric and you want to make sure that you can control it when you're doing the binding. And so I just start to roll it. I fed it through one end and now I'm rolling it so I can make myself a big old piece so that when I'm putting it on the binding, or on the quilt, I'm sorry, it's not bulky. It's not messy, because if I didn't do that, I would have a mess like this. And no. You can have a mess like that. Some people do it, and then I've noticed for me, it got caught under the chair when I rolled on it. It got, I got lost in the process, and it was just really disorganized. And so, and you just keep on rolling it. And then you have a big old piece. So, I'll come back at the end. Here I am at the end of my big old roll of binding strip that I made, and I'm going to go ahead and finish it off and roll it. And what I do is, I am going to use this soon, then I get a pin at the end of it and just pierce all the way through, so it literally kind of locks everything in.